The police were pounding on my front gate, and it wasn't just a couple of officers. No, 4 squad cars were lined up at my ranch entrance, sirens wailing and lights flashing like I'd just pulled off a heist. One officer's voice boomed through a loudspeaker, "Step away from the gate. This is an official order." All I'd done was put up my trusty metal cattle gate, the same one I'd had for years, the one I'd reinforced last night after some reckless fool barreled through it with a pickup truck again. But this time it felt personal. This time the HOA, some association I'd never even signed up for, had dragged me into a lawsuit, accusing me of blocking public access to a road they'd secretly carved through the heart of my private ranch, a road that didn't even exist 3 months ago, slicing right through my livestock pasture, spooking my animals, and splitting my land like it wasn't mine to claim. Now they'd sicked the police on me, insisting I open the gate to protect some so-called public right-of-way. I held my ground, raising both hands and calling back with a steady voice, "This is private land. That road is illegal." The officer barked again, "Sir, unlock the gate or we'll force entry." That's when I dropped the words that turned the tide. Not only am I not unlocking it, every member of that HOA is banned from stepping foot on my land. The officers went rigid, but the real twist was just beginning. At that moment, my wife stepped outside, clutching a thick folder of documents, her eyes calm and her voice unshakable. "I suggest you'll take a look at the property lines before. You make a mistake you'll regret." And with that, the whole situation started to unravel. Let's backtrack. My name's Jack Coleman, a 56-year-old retired firefighter who's called this 100-acre Texas ranch home for nearly 2 decades, with my wife Emily, a paralegal sharp as a tack and twice as fierce, by my side. Stay tuned for more. Which city of the United States are you watching from? Drop a comment and share with us if you've had any confrontation with the HOA. We'll narrate your story on our channel. We moved out here after I retired early due to a spinal injury, looking for peace, quiet, and space to raise horses and live out our lives with dignity and kindness. I mind my business. I pay my taxes, I donate hay to local animal shelters during dry seasons, and host kids from the local middle school every spring to learn about ranch life. My land is not for sale. So, when a group of well-dressed newcomers moved into the newly built subdivision next to my property and formed their little HOA, I paid no attention. After all, they had their gated community. I had my land. That is until the day I saw bulldozers on my land. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone was clearing brush, or maybe county workers had strayed off course. But no, they were paving something. When I walked out there, shocked, confused, limping from my old injury, 3 men in orange vests and 1 HOA board member named Curtis looked at me like I was trespassing. "Can I help you?" Curtis asked, in that smug tone that made my stomach turn. I pointed at the half-formed road slicing through my lower pasture. "Yeah, what the hell is that doing on my land?" He gave a small, tight smile. "This? Oh, it's a new access road. We voted on it. It connects the east entrance of the subdivision to Route 17, better for emergency vehicles, school buses, you know. It's part of our community development plan." I laughed. I thought it was a joke, but Curtis was serious. "You should be happy. This increases the value of your property." I stared at him. "You didn't ask. You didn't notify. You didn't get a permit from me. This is my land." He shrugged. "Eminent domain laws. Jack, look it up." He was wrong. I did look it up. Emily looked it up even harder. She printed out maps, deeds, property surveys, and GPS markers from the county land office. That road, it wasn't on any official plan. No easement, no county approval, no vote, nothing. They illegally built a road on private land and then told me I had to keep it open. So I did what any self-respecting landowner would do. I put up a reinforced gate with a camera and a padlock and closed that so-called road down. Then I posted signs, private property, no trespassing, violators will be prosecuted. That same night, someone ran their car straight through the gate and into my fence, injuring one of my mayors. They left a note on my mailbox the next morning. Enjoy your little protest. You'll be hearing from our lawyers. And, I did, because 2 days later I got hit with a lawsuit filed by the HOA claiming I was violating their right of way. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, running my fingers over old photographs of my dad, who passed this ranch down to me, and wondering how we got here. We'd always taught our kids the values of kindness, respect, and standing your ground. That good people do the right thing even when no one's looking. But what do you do when people lie, cheat, and bully in broad daylight? I'll tell you what I did. I told Emily we weren't backing down. We hired a land surveyor. We contacted a real estate attorney from San Antonio, and I started documenting everything: dates, times, photos, license plates, videos of every car that passed through. And I also started researching HOA bylaws. Turns out their power ends exactly where their property ends. But things didn't slow down. Curtis and his crew doubled down. They called emergency meetings, printed flyers saying I was a public danger, and even contacted the local paper with a hit piece titled "Man Blocks School Route for Ranch Standoff." Emily wanted to respond publicly. I told her, no, we keep our heads down and let the facts speak. But then came today, when they sent the cops they thought I'd fold. But instead, they're about to learn something else. I didn't just ban them from my land, I was about to shut them down completely, because what I had in my hand wasn't just proof of land ownership, it was a cease and desist order filed in district court, signed by a judge that very morning. And just as the officer raised his hand to order the gate be opened, someone else pulled up in a black SUV behind the patrol cars. Someone Curtis didn't expect. Someone who was about to make everything 10 times worse for him. The black SUV pulled in fast, the tires crunching over the gravel like thunder. It didn't have police markings, but the way the patrol officers straightened up the second they saw it told me everything I needed to know. Curtis, standing behind the officers in his smug button-down and HOA lanyard, took one look and paused like he'd seen a ghost. The driver's door swung open. Out stepped my wife, Emily. But this time she wasn't just holding a stack of papers. She was flanked by U.S. Marshals, 2 of them. And behind them came Judge Daniels, an older African-American man with thick glasses, a booming voice, and zero tolerance for nonsense. The entire yard went silent. "Who's in charge here?" the judge asked, his eyes moving sharply from the officers to Curtis. "I am," one of the deputies answered. "No, you're not," Judge Daniels snapped. "I am, and I have an emergency injunction order that says this land is private, this road is illegal, and the HOA is now in direct violation of state law." Curtis opened his mouth. "But, Your Honor, I don't want to hear it," the judge said sharply, cutting him off like a blade. You're bored, and anyone who touches this land again will be found in contempt of court and subject to immediate arrest. Do I make myself clear?" Curtis looked like he might faint. The officers awkwardly stepped back from the gate. One tried to mutter something about conflicting information, but Judge Daniels waved the documents in his face. "This is a signed land deed. This is a survey. This is aerial footage from the county showing the road wasn't here 3 months ago. You've been misled, officer, and now it's your duty to correct that." Then the judge turned to me. "Mr. Coleman, do you have anything else to say?" I nodded, stepping forward slowly. "Yes, Your Honor. I have video of HOA members crossing the gate even after I posted legal warnings, and I've identified Curtis and 2 others as having vandalized my property, including a hit-and-run that injured my livestock. Emily handed the USB drive to one of the marshals. Curtis backed away slowly, trying to slip behind the group. "Stay where you are," one of the marshals barked. "You're not going anywhere, but let me take you back to how all this really began, because, trust me, what just happened is only the middle of the mess." It all started 7 months ago, the day I saw real estate developers camped out by my west fence line. They were walking the property edge with blueprints and tablets, talking loudly and laughing. One of them waved when he saw me on horseback. "Nice spot you got here, old-timer," he called out. "We're just laying plans for the new HOA community. You'll love it. Brings value to your property." I didn't reply, I just stared because I had a sick feeling in my gut. Emily later called the county records office and learned the truth. Some firm out of Austin had purchased the 400 acres beside my land, split it into lots, and fast-tracked a development called Ridgeway Estates. In just 3 months, houses went up like mushrooms after rain. Fancy gates, solar-powered lamps, curved driveways. Before I knew it, my quiet rural life was now bordered by joggers, dog walkers, and board meetings. But I didn't complain. Live and let live, right? I didn't go to the HOA meetings, didn't file noise complaints, didn't report their kids for throwing balls over my fence. I just minded my ranch and kept my peace. That was until the day they decided my land was theirs. Curtis knocked on my door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, neighbor," he said, "we've got this plan to improve traffic flow and reduce emergency response time." The community voted on an access road, just a little shortcut from the east exit to the main highway. "It would be great if you could let us use a portion of your land. You've got so much space. It won't bother you." I stared at him. "Absolutely not," I said flatly. He blinked like I had spit on him. "This road would benefit everyone," he said. "Don't be selfish. It's not like you're even using that field." "That field is where my horses graze," I snapped. "And it's my private land. You don't get to decide what I do with it." Curtis chuckled. "Well, maybe not today, but I know people. This community is growing. Things change." He left after that, and I figured it was over, but I was wrong. A week later, bulldozers arrived. They claimed to be surveying with heavy equipment. I called the sheriff, who said he'd look into it. By the time looking into it happened, the road was already halfway paved. I filed complaints. No response. Emily went deeper. She discovered something terrifying. The HOA had submitted fake documents to the county, saying they had an easement through a stretch of abandoned property, and that abandoned property was my ranch. They literally forged a map and said I no longer existed. I couldn't believe it. We sent letters, emails, threats of lawsuits. Nothing worked. They ignored every message. Then came the cars, kids racing across my fields, strangers stopping by my barn thinking it was a clubhouse. One guy even asked if he could host a wedding on the open space. Emily cried one night, "This is everything we worked for, Jack. Everything." I hugged her and told her we'd fight it. We started reinforcing our fences. We added motion lights, cameras, and gates. Then someone ran the gate down and hurt my horse. That's when I knew this wasn't just a boundary issue. This was a war. Emily went full paralegal mode, drafting letters, compiling evidence, digging into land laws. I started recording every car, every conversation, every delivery driver who thought he was in the subdivision. That's how we built our case. And that's why when the police showed up, I wasn't surprised. What they didn't expect was that my wife had already filed for a cease and desist in court that morning, and Judge Daniels had signed it without delay. Now with the law on our side and Curtis frozen in front of a federal marshal, I thought maybe, just maybe, the storm was over. But as the marshal started escorting Curtis to his car, One of them looked down at a sheet of paper and paused. He frowned. "Jack," he said, raising an eyebrow. "You're going to want to see this." He held out the paper. It was a new map, a development plan, and this one showed not just the road through my pasture, but a community park, a pond, and future expansion zones labeled Phase 2, Phase 3, and clubhouse area. All of it on my land. I looked at Emily. She was already dialing her phone, and I knew this was far from over. I stared at the map in my hands like it was a bomb ticking down to zero. "Jack." Emily's voice was low, sharp, like a warning. "This isn't just about the road. They were planning to take your land, all of it. Not just my horse pasture, not just a shortcut, but my barn, my workshop, even our family's old oak tree where we buried my father's ashes. It was all marked like a shopping mall blueprint. Park benches here, walking trail there, a playground where my cattle corral stood." The marshal leaned in and tapped the bottom corner. "This is filed with the City Planning Office, submitted last week." I felt my heart hit the floor. "Filed as what?" "Community Expansion Zone," he replied. "They labeled it vacant HOA reserve space." Emily nearly dropped her phone. "That's a lie. Jack's land isn't vacant. It's registered, taxed, and in use." The judge, still standing nearby, let out a breath and pinched the bridge of his nose. "This is getting bigger than just a land dispute. We might be looking at civil fraud, possibly criminal. You need to get a federal land attorney now." Curtis, who had been silent while the officers questioned him, suddenly spoke up. "This is all a mistake," he muttered. "Our documents were filed by the previous project manager. It's not my fault, I was just following the expansion plan. But no one was buying it because Curtis wasn't just a board member. He was also a silent partner in the real estate group that developed Ridgeway Estates. Emily had found that nugget during her digging. And now, with a judge and 2 U.S. Marshals present, we had the kind of audience you don't lie to. Still, I tried to stay calm. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my land back, my peace, my space, my animals safe, my life. And that's when the judge said something I'll never forget. "Jack, you have every legal right to not only block access to your land, but to pursue restitution. But you need to understand this won't end quietly. These people, they're going to try again." He was right. Because the very next morning, I woke up to find my fences cut again. This time, it wasn't just a single gate. It was 4 sections of barbed wire cut clean with bolt cutters. My horses had wandered dangerously close to the HOA road before a kind neighbor corralled them back. The cameras all disabled. Someone had spray painted over the lenses. They were sending a message. We were at war. Emily stormed into the house around 7 a.m., holding one of our no trespassing signs ripped in half with the words, "This isn't over," scrolled across the back in black marker. "I'm calling the sheriff again," she fumed, "and I'm getting the media involved. They don't know who they're dealing with." But I stopped her. Not yet. I had a better plan. I pulled out the folder I'd been quietly preparing because while Emily had been building the legal case, I had been building my kind of case, a community one. I had statements from our neighbors, photos of HOA trucks parked on my land, video, clips from other ranchers in Texas who'd faced the same shady tactics, and then something better, a whistleblower. Yes, sir. One of the construction workers who had helped pave the road through my ranch had reached out anonymously. He sent me screenshots of messages from Curtis and other board members, openly joking about how easy it was to steal land when the owner's just an old cowboy. That same worker sent me a PDF, an internal memo, where they bragged that by the time anyone noticed, the road would be in and the county wouldn't bother reversing it. They were banking on me giving up. Instead, I was about to blow it up. The next day, Emily filed our formal lawsuit in civil court, suing the Ridgeway HOA for property damage, unlawful trespassing, attempted land seizure, and emotional distress. We also filed a formal complaint with the Texas Attorney General's office. Then I did one more thing. I posted the story, photos, maps, videos, names. I uploaded it all to Reddit, then to Facebook, then to the local news Facebook group where half the town gets their info. I wrote the truth plainly. HOA built illegal road through my ranch and then sued me for blocking it. Now they want the rest of my land. The post went viral overnight. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments, and most importantly, support. People started sending me similar stories from their own towns. HOA board members offered legal tips. Ranchers offered to help me repair fences. A local news reporter asked to do a feature. I wasn't alone anymore. But that didn't mean things got easier, because 2 nights later, I caught a group of teenagers, probably from the HOA neighborhood, sneaking onto my land with cans of gasoline. They were going to set fire to my barn. I had them on camera. I called the sheriff, who caught them minutes later hiding behind my hay bales. The kids were arrested, and guess what? One of them was Curtis's son. You'd think that would have ended things, but no. The very next day, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Another lawsuit. This time, the HOA was accusing me of harassment. They claimed I was inciting public hatred, endangering children, and creating a hostile environment for the Ridgeway community. I stared at the papers, jaw clenched. Emily said, "They're throwing everything at us, hoping we'll crack." But I didn't, because I had already planned my next move. I was going to ban the entire HOA from ever stepping foot on my property legally, permanently, and with the full force of the law. And the judge, Judge Daniels, was about to grant me something most landowners only dream of, an exclusive protective easement order. An order that didn't just forbid access, it gave me the power to fence off every inch, place permanent blockades, and have any trespasser arrested without warning. That hearing was tomorrow, and I had just received a call from my lawyer with one last twist. The HOA had tried to tamper with county records and they got caught. Now, the district attorney was involved and someone, possibly Curtis himself, was facing criminal charges. But just before I could finish celebrating that news, a loud bang rang out behind the house. I ran out back, and what I saw nearly made my heart stop. My barn, the same one where I kept our horses' feed and gear, was now on fire. The flames reached into the night sky like angry red fingers, licking the darkness and turning my peaceful ranch into a war zone. My barn, my father's barn, was going up in flames. "Call 911, I shouted at the top of my lungs, sprinting toward the fire with my old fireman instincts kicking in. Emily was already on her phone, her voice shaking as she gave our address to dispatch. "It's our barn. It's fully engulfed." "The animals, Jack? The horses?" I didn't even wait. I burst into the barn with nothing but a wet towel over my face. My eyes stung. Smoke filled my lungs. I could barely see, but I could hear them, my horses screaming in fear. I opened stalls one by one, slapping the rear of each horse to drive. Them toward the open back gate. "Go! Get out!" I yelled, coughing so hard I could barely breathe. One by one, they bolted into the open pasture, hooves pounding the earth like thunder. Ember, my oldest mare, was limping and scared, but she made it out. I wrapped a lead around her neck and guided her out just before a beam collapsed behind us. We barely made it. I turned around in time to see half the barn roof cave in. Emily ran to me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders, coughing, crying, "You're okay. You're okay. You got them all out." But I couldn't even respond. I just stared at the burning wreckage and thought of my dad. He built that barn with his own hands. In 1973 now it was ash. The fire department arrived 10 minutes later, too late to save anything. They managed to stop the flames from spreading to the feed shed or the tool garage, but the barn was gone. When the sheriff arrived, he pulled me aside. "We found accelerant," he said quietly. "Gasoline! This was arson!" Emily went pale. "You don't think it was the HOA, do you?" The sheriff looked grim. "We've arrested Curtis's son before, haven't we? And there's been multiple reports of trespassing from that neighborhood. I can't say for sure yet, but we've opened a full investigation."
"I suggest you get a lawyer on standby." I didn't answer him.
I didn't have to because, deep down, I knew this wasn't just about land anymore. This was personal. But let me be clear, I wasn't looking for revenge. That wasn't me. I'm a man of principle, of peace. I only wanted justice and protection for my
land, my wife, my animals. And that's exactly what I got the very next morning. We were scheduled to appear in front of Judge Daniels again, this time with a full protective easement request and a fire investigation report to support it.
I stood in that courtroom with soot still on my boots. Emily, holding my hand, never looked more determined. Curtis was there too, but this time he didn't look smug. He looked scared because just before the hearing began, the DA's assistant entered the room and handed a sealed file to the judge. He read it silently. Then he looked up. "Mr. Coleman," he said, "this court is now in possession of video footage showing 3 individuals, 2 of them HOA board members, entering your property the night of the fire, carrying gas cans and wearing masks." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Curtis's lawyer turned white. The judge continued. "The footage also confirms a 3rd individual, your son, Mr. Curtis, pouring gasoline around the barn."
"I am issuing warrants for all 3. Curtis's mouth fell open. "I didn't know," he stammered. I didn't authorize that, but it didn't matter. Judge Daniels banged his gavel. "This hearing is suspended. Curtis Williams, you are under investigation."
"For conspiracy to commit arson and fraudulent land seizure." 2 officers stepped forward and placed Curtis in handcuffs. Emily exhaled sharply beside me. I squeezed her hand. It wasn't over, but it was turning. Later that afternoon, we received the ruling. The court had officially granted us a permanent protective land easement order. That meant no one from Ridgeway HOA could step foot on our property. Any attempt to use our land would result in instant arrest. All road use through our land was now permanently revoked. A legal blockade could be constructed at any point on the land perimeter. I was also advised to pursue a civil case for damages, but I had something more important on my mind. I returned home and walked the fence line with Emily. The barn still smouldered. The charred beams lay like broken bones across the ground. But my horses were safe. My land was quiet again. The road that once sliced through my pasture, blocked off by a new steel gate and boulders we hauled in ourselves. But there was one thing that stuck with me. The look in Curtis's eyes as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. That look of disbelief, like he couldn't understand why this was happening, like he was the victim. That's the thing about people like
him. They don't see land, they see opportunity, they don't see legacy, they see leverage. And when they're told no, they don't listen.
They just try to take it. But I had built this life with my own hands. And no man, no HOA, no fake document or crooked deal was going to steal it from me. Especially not when I had something stronger than power. I had truth and an entire community behind me. But even after the arrests, even after the order was signed, something didn't sit right because 2 nights later, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside a drone photo of my ranch with a red X drawn across my house and 1 sentence scrolled in marker. "You're not safe yet." I sat in the kitchen holding the photo, the overhead light flickering slightly above me. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from fury. Emily was frozen across the table, her eyes locked on the red X drawn over our roof. The message below it wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. Someone still out there thought this wasn't over. Emily's voice broke the silence. "Jack, this means someone's watching us right now." I nodded slowly. "And they're not done." The local sheriff arrived within the hour after I called him and showed him the package. He looked at the envelope inside. No return address, no fingerprints. On the photo either. They wore gloves. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I'd bet anything it's someone still tied to the HOA, maybe someone scared about what Curtis might say, now that he's been arrested." That made sense because Curtis had flipped. 2 days ago, under pressure and facing felony charges, he agreed to cooperate. He'd already told investigators about a secret HOA fund. Money raised from fake emergency repair fees and funneled into bribes, private contractors, and land buyout attempts. He claimed he wasn't the mastermind. He said someone else on the board was behind it all. That someone, he didn't give a name yet, but the drone photo, that was proof someone still wanted to scare us into silence. Emily locked every door and window that night. We took turns keeping watch in shifts. I sat by the front window with my old rifle, the one my father gave me after my first rodeo win at 17. Around 2:40 a.m., the motion lights behind the barn flashed on. I bolted out the back door, flashlight and rifle in hand, heart pounding like
a drum. And what I found was a drone hovering just 30 FT above my roof, quietly blinking. I didn't hesitate.
I raised my rifle and fired. Crack. The drone sparked, spun, and crashed into the gravel beside the gate. Emily came running. What happened? I held up the smoking wreck. They were watching. We called the sheriff again, and this time he took the broken drone straight to evidence. He promised to trace it through serial numbers. The next morning, my lawyer called. "Jack," he said, "you're not going to believe this." I braced myself. "The HOA's president, Sandra Beck, she just fled town." Sandra.
I blinked.
That woman who brought cookies to the first HOA picnic and claimed she wanted to beautify the community. That's the one. She just emptied her HOA account, nearly $120,000, and disappeared. Turns out Sandra wasn't just the face of the HOA. She was also the one who hired the private contractors who paved the road through my property. She signed the altered county documents. She organized the fraudulent vote to label my land as vacant. Curtis, he was her puppet. And now that he was squealing, she was gone. But she didn't cover her tracks as well as she thought. Within days, a federal investigator found her trail. Bank transfers, emails, phone logs, everything led back to her. The DOJ was preparing charges. Meanwhile, Emily and I made a choice. We were going to hold a town meeting, not just for us, but for every other rancher, homeowner, and retiree in our area who'd faced this kind of HOA overreach. We rented the local Grand Hall, printed flyers, and sent out invites. Over 80 people showed up. Some were ranchers like me, tired of new developments encroaching on their land. Some were single parents who'd been fined for letting their kids' bikes sit on the porch. Some were veterans, retirees, teachers, people who were bullied into silence. We shared our story. The illegal road, the forged maps, the arson, the drone. People were furious, but they were also inspired. By the end of the meeting, we had formed a new alliance, Residents Against HOA. Overreach, we created a petition for the county to audit every HOA in the district. Within a week, we had over 1,500 signatures. It hit the local news, then state news, then national headlines. Suddenly, HOA Karen culture wasn't just a joke on
Reddit. It was a serious problem. with serious people fighting back, but even with the legal win, the arrests, and the growing support, something still bothered me.
Because one night I received a call from Curtis. It was from the county jail. I almost didn't answer, but I did. His voice was quiet, beaten down. "Jack, I just wanted to say I was wrong. You didn't deserve any of this." I stayed silent. "Then," he added, "but I wasn't lying when I said Sandra wasn't the only one. There's another, the real person behind the fund, behind the threats. I only helped because they promised me I'd be rich." I gripped the phone tighter. "Who? Curtis?" He hesitated. "Then you already met him. Remember that guy in the blue blazer at the first Ridgeway barbecue? His name's Troy Maddox. He's the developer who sold Ridgeway the land. He's also the one who forged the easement papers. He's dangerous, Jack. If he finds out I told you, he'll come after me, and maybe you too." I hung up, slowly. That was a name I had heard before. Troy Maddox, a flashy, smooth-talking businessman who bragged about turning dirt into diamonds. He drove a black Mercedes and wore sunglasses even indoors. I'd seen him twice, once at the HOA's launch party and once parked
Outside my fence months before all this started.
He had connections, big ones. If he really was the puppet master behind this scheme, then Curtis and Sandra were just pawns. And this wasn't just about my land. It was about every ranch, every field, every open space left in this part of Texas. The threat wasn't over. It was just beginning. And as I stood by my broken barn that evening watching the sun set over my battle car land, I realized something. They might have burned my barn, but they just lit a fire in me because I was going after Troy Maddox next, and I wasn't going to stop until every stolen acre was reclaimed. The name Troy Maddox echoed in my mind like a gunshot in a canyon. Everything suddenly made sense. Curtis and Sandra, they were loud, flashy, and easy to spot, but Troy, he was the shadow behind the curtain. The real estate shark with the $1 million smile and a handshake that probably signed more lies than contracts. I still remembered the first time I saw him. It was at the Ridgeway Welcome Barbecue over a year ago, before any of this nightmare began. He'd walked up to me with a plastic cup of lemonade, dressed in a navy blazer, no tie, and a Rolex that caught the Texas sun like diamonds. "Jack, right?" he'd said, offering his hand. "Heard this land's been in your family for generations. Real nice spread you've got." I shook his hand stiffly. "Appreciate that." He smiled. "Look, I know you're probably tired of people trying to buy you out, but I'm not like them. I'm a problem solver. So if you ever get tired of fences and horses and lawsuits, give me a call." That smile, the kind that makes you check if your wallet's still in your back pocket. Back then, I didn't think much of it. But now I knew he wasn't just watching from a distance. He was pulling every string. Curtis confirmed it in his confession. Sandra had admitted it before she skipped town. And the drone photo with the red X, it was Troy's signature message. He wanted me off this land. So I decided it was time to hit back. I called a friend, Will Johnson, a retired federal investigator turned private detective. Will owed me a favor. Years ago, I helped save his horses during a barn fire when he was out of town. I told him everything about the road, the fake maps, the arrests, the drone. Will agreed to dig into Troy Maddox, and in just 3 days he came back with a mountain of dirt. "Troy is not just shady," Will said. "He's criminal." Turns out Troy had been sued 6 times in 3 different states for land misrepresentation, illegal development, zoning fraud, and bribery. He'd paid hush money to 2 former board members in Colorado. And in Nevada, he bulldozed protected wetlands, got slapped with a fine, and never paid it. But here's the kicker. He'd just filed a new proposal with the state for a green living. Luxury compound on my land, even after the court had ruled in my favor, even after the fire, even after his board members were in cuffs. Troy was betting I'd walk away. He was wrong. Emily and I filed a new motion in court, not just for civil damages, but for a restraining land injunction against Troy Maddox himself. Our lawyer, Michelle Cortez, a hard-nosed litigator from Dallas with a voice like a buzzsaw, walked into court with a thick binder and a mission. This man, she told the judge, has committed fraud, violated environmental codes, threatened a landowner, and used stolen HOA funds to fuel an illegal development campaign. Troy had a lawyer too, slick suit, alligator skin briefcase, a man paid to smile and say, "My client denies all allegations." But when Michelle dropped Will's dossier on the judge's desk, and when we handed over Curtis's signed confession, it was game over. Judge Daniels issued a court order. Troy Maddox was to cease all development activities in the Ridgeway area. He was banned from stepping foot on my property or contacting me in any way. All future zoning applications tied to him were now flagged for review. Troy stood there blinking, stunned, and then he looked at me, not with fear, with rage, like I'd humiliated him in front of the whole world. As he walked out of the courtroom, he muttered under his breath, "This isn't the end." I smiled. For you it is. But just when we thought we could finally breathe, another blow came. The county
emailed us a notification.
It said, "Ridgeway HOA has filed a new petition for emergency public access through Coleman Ranch, claiming vital community access requires temporary reinstatement of previous road." Emily screamed when she read it. They're trying again after.
Everything. I called our lawyer, furious. How is this even allowed? She sighed. Because HOAs have money, and money stalls the law. They're hoping to drag this out until you're exhausted or bankrupt. That night, I sat in the dark with Ember,
my old mare, brushing her mane as she nuzzled my shoulder, and I made a decision. I was going to finish this once and for all. No more lawsuits, no more waiting. The next morning, I started calling the media. I gave interviews, I posted everything, every document, video, confession on social media. I invited news crews to tour the ranch. I even started a GoFundMe campaign called Protect Our Land, Protect Our Future. And donations poured in from across the country. People were fed up, tired of bullies in suits stealing land and silencing voices. And then something unexpected happened. A state senator from Texas, Senator Dolores Ray, called me personally. "I've seen your story, Mr. Coleman," she said, "and I think it's time we changed some laws." She introduced a bill that same month, the Landowner Protection Act, designed to stop HOAs from expanding outside their original zones, enforce stricter zoning laws, and criminalize fake easement filings. The bill gained traction. My story was the headline. Suddenly, the bully behind the curtain, Troy Maddox, was being publicly dragged through the mud. Real estate partners dropped him. His developments were frozen. He lost everything. And as the sun set behind my repaired fences, Emily and I sat on our porch, hands intertwined. "You did it, Jack," she said. "No," I whispered. "We did it." But just as peace returned and the news trucks packed up, a sleek black SUV pulled into the gravel outside my gate. It wasn't Troy, it was someone else. A man in a tailored grey suit stepped out. He raised a white envelope and said, "Mr. Coleman, you've been served." Another legal document, but this time the name on the sender, Federal Land Bureau of Development, and the letter it read, "Notice of Federal Interest in Land Acquisition Project 17A. You are within a designated zone for future federal infrastructure. Negotiations will begin immediately." I stood there silent. Then I whispered, "Now it's the government." I held the envelope like it was a live grenade.
Federal Land Bureau of Development. I muttered under my breath, reading the bold black ink on the paper as my heart thudded in my chest. Emily came to my side, brushing dirt off her jeans as she peered over my shoulder. "Jack, what is this?"
I unfolded the letter. You are hereby notified that your property falls within the projected development zone for the 17A Federal Infrastructure Corridor. This is not a compulsory acquisition at this time. However, initial discussions for voluntary sale and access coordination will begin within 30 days. I dropped the paper onto the porch floorboards and ran both hands through my hair. It was happening all over again, but this time it wasn't Curtis. It wasn't Sandra. It wasn't even slick-talking Troy Maddox. It was the government. Emily's voice
Shook. "After all we've been through, they still want our land." I nodded slowly, already piecing it together.
This 17A corridor, whatever it was, must have been in the works for a while, maybe even longer than Ridgeway Estates. It explained why Maddox was so confident. Why Curtis acted like he owned the place. They were pawns in something bigger. I called our lawyer, Michelle Cortez. She didn't sound surprised. "Jack, I've been hearing whispers about this for months. The 17A project is supposed to be a high-speed transport corridor running across county lines. But here's the thing, they're targeting rural properties first. They think landowners won't fight back." "They thought wrong," I growled. Michelle sighed. "They haven't filed for eminent domain yet. That's important. Right now, it's just a voluntary negotiation. You have leverage, but I knew how it would go. First they ask, then they push, then they take. We'd seen it all before. A landowner gets a friendly letter, then a surveyor shows up, then someone accidentally tears down your fence. Before you know it, you're boxed in, out of options, and watching bulldozers roll across your pasture. Not this time. Emily and I spent that night digging, calling ranchers in other counties, comparing notes, watching old hearings online. The next morning, we called a press conference right here on our ranch. A makeshift podium was set up near the still-scorched barn foundation. News crews lined up in the dirt, microphones and cameras ready. I stepped up, holding the letter in my hand. "My name is Jack Coleman. This ranch has been in my family for nearly 100 years. Over the past year, I've been harassed, sued, stalked, burned out, and lied to by private developers and HOA members who tried to steal what generations of honest work built." I paused, looked every camera in the lens. "And now the federal government wants to try the same thing." Gasps, reporters scribbled. "This isn't just my fight anymore," I continued. "They want this corridor to run through every open piece of land they can find. But they forgot one thing. We're not just landowners, we're families, workers, veterans, Americans, and we don't just give up." The crowd cheered. Later that day, Jax's Stand with Jack started trending. By evening, over 100,000 people had signed a petition to protect rural landowners from forced federal development. Senators called, news anchors ran my speech. I even got a letter of support from a group of veterans in Montana, but we still had a legal problem because the Land Bureau wasn't backing down. A week later, a new letter arrived. This one wasn't a request. It was a notice of intent to survey the land. That meant federal agents had permission to step foot on my ranch, even without my say-so, unless I got creative. And I did. With Michelle's help, we filed for a special agricultural heritage designation. We proved my land was of historic and cultural value used for veteran therapy programs, school education, and horse rescue rehab. It slowed the process but didn't stop it. So I called in a favor. Remember the alliance we built, residents against HOA overreach? Well, we had grown over 12,000 members across 5 states, and I asked them all for one thing: come to my ranch. And they did, in trucks, campers, RVs, And on horseback, veterans, teachers, ranchers, students, they lined the roads, stood shoulder to shoulder at my property line, and when the federal agents showed up to survey, they were met by a human fence. No yelling, no violence, just people holding signs that read, "You can't steal roots. This land is our story. We stand with Jack." The federal team backed off. They sent a statement to the press saying, "We are reviewing our next steps," but we knew what that meant. They weren't going away. So Emily had one last idea. "Let's make the land untouchable," she said. "How?" I asked. "We turn it into a non-profit conservancy, protected, registered, a place that can never be sold, never be seized." It took weeks, tons of paperwork, but with donations from around the country and help from a group of pro bono attorneys, we filed the final papers. The Coleman Family Ranch Conservancy. Now our land was protected forever. No HOA, no developer, no government could touch it. The next morning, I stood by the rebuilt barn. Ember grazed quietly nearby. Her leg healed. The wind was soft, the sunrise golden. Emily wrapped her arms around my waist. "It's finally over," she whispered. I nodded. We didn't just win, we protected something far bigger than ourselves. And if you're out there facing an HOA that's threatening your peace, a developer knocking at your door, or a bully trying to tell you what's yours, remember this. You have a voice, use it. You have rights, defend them, and you are never alone. This land, it's not just dirt. It's home.